this had 6 layers of wallpaper on it. And so initially what we tried to do is, well, what we did is we removed the 6 layers, and it was painstaking. Started over here, went all the way around, and had to take it off layer by layer. Once we got all of the wallpaper off, then we came in and did some skim coating with drywall mud to repair the existing plaster. We didn't want to just rip all the plaster out. We wanted to try to preserve as many of the original materials as possible. So the way we did that was to skim coat over the top of where the plaster was falling apart or damaged. There were certain sections where, especially around the fireplace, where there was excessive leaking, and those areas we did have to cut out and replace with chunks of drywall. But other than that, it's got all of the original materials in the walls. Painted them all, added wallpaper. The wallpaper is by a company called Bradbury & Bradbury, which specializes in period wallpaper. So I tried to pick something that would have been relevant of that time, around 1885, turn of the century. Then we pulled up the carpeting, found these great floors, maple floors. They're 1 inch wide, tongue and groove, very thin, only about 1/4 of an inch thick, and had all of these refinished. Buffing, and then we had 2 coats of polyurethane placed on. So most of it was in excellent shape. Some of it had to be replaced due to water leaks around radiators, that type of thing. So, but that was very exciting to find out that we could preserve the floors as well, because it had carpet and you couldn't even see them, so that was a big find. Other than that, these are all the original wood windows and, the original woodwork. You can see after years of nails up here for curtains, I've left those as adds to the character of the home. All of the radiators have been removed and stripped and sandblasted. So that was quite a process. This one in particular was a nightmare to get out. Took them out on the porch. Some of them we ended up taking into another building and having them specially sandblasted. Others were too heavy to do that, such as this one, so we just had to do it right out on the porch. Took a combination of both, using heavy-duty stripper and sandblasting, little tiny tools, scraping, that type of thing, and then we primed the whole thing and then spray painted it. The staircase had been painted. It was originally stained the way you see it now, but it was had been painted a couple of times. It actually had some faux painting all over the handrail, the newel post, the trim along the sides, the baseboard, and the steps, and the trim around the doors and windows in this small entry area. This was one of the last things that I did in the house. And myself and 2 other contractors, stripped all of this down and tried to bring it back to the way it would have been originally. It took 150 hours of labor just to strip it. But we were using little tiny tools, the types of tools that you use for your eyeglasses, little tiny screwdrivers, and little tiny brushes, and anything that we could find that could get us into all of these little nooks and crannies that you see here. And so it took us quite a while to complete it, but then once we had it all stripped, went back and then had to try to match that stain to the stain that you see in the living room, because this is the only location of where the original trim was and was not painted. So we matched that up as closely as we could. This is the dining room. We're not totally finished with buying pieces for this room yet. We're still looking for some type of a sideboard over here. I am having an oil painting done that's going to hang on this wall that's going to be about downtown Cadillac. It's going to be a landscape of downtown Cadillac around the turn of the century. So I'm very excited about that. And it will have individuals in there, citizens of Cadillac in there, in period clothing, that type of thing. This table is actually from the Levi Harris house down the street. One of the early founders of Cadillac owned Harris Milling. And they recently sold that house, and we were able to shop around for a few antiques in their home. And this may not have been original to their house. which was built in the I think right around the 1880s, but it's very close to the turn of the century again. And so I'm very excited. All I had to do was refinish the top of this table. And this was done by a local antique dealer, and they did a terrific job. The rest of it was just cleaned up. So I was very excited to have another piece of history in Cadillac here. The kitchen was, first of all, the ceiling had been dropped down at least 2 feet. So in order to keep the kitchen, to get the kitchen to go back to the way it was, to take it back to the way it was, we raised the ceiling. And the way we could tell was just by poking a hole in the ceiling that was here, stuck our head up there, looked around, and you could see, where the wallpaper went up, and we could see exactly where the original lath and plaster was. And so this has been raised to that height. We had to gut the kitchen totally because the kitchen had been done in the 1970s. So nothing in it was original. So we didn't feel badly about going ahead and starting all over here and try to recreate what could have been or what might have been. So the floor was a pine floor, and it was a tongue and groove, but it was extremely rough. It was not like the maple floor that we have in here. It was more like barnwood and very rustic, which was typical of the way they treated their kitchens. Could not restore the floor. Had my wood flooring contractor come over, take a look at it, and he says, I cannot restore this floor at all. It's just in too bad a shape. So I decided to go ahead and tile that. But along this direction, we had a wall that started right here on the other side of this refrigerator and went here. They had added this wall later. It was not original, and we could tell by the type of 2x4s they used and how they attached it at the ceiling. And but they had done it so that they could have a separate apartment in the back. So again, we removed that wall and opened it up, and this is probably the way the space would have looked originally. My game plan is to come up with a business then that can work with historic homeowners or even commercial residents or commercial buildings.
Sure.
And commercial developers and that type of thing that want to restore their homes and buildings.